Hi, I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. Welcome to the CISO 500, a monthly Cybercrime magazine podcast series featuring interviews with Fortune 500 Chief Information Security Officers. I'm here today with Dawn Cappelli, CISSP, Vice President, Global Security and Chief Information Security Officer at Rockwell Automation. Welcome, Dawn. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
So, Dawn, to get started, tell us about how you got interested in technology and what led you to the University of Pittsburgh, where you earned a BS in computer science and mathematics, and where you also went to graduate school for computer science.
Well, I've lived in Pittsburgh my whole life, so it kind of makes sense that I would have gone to the University of Pittsburgh. I actually was always really good in math, but I felt like I wanted to get into more of a people field. And so when I first started college, I had a social work major. Then I changed it to psychology. And all along, I was taking math classes because I just loved math. And so in my junior year, I finally realized, boy, I really love math more than anything else. So I don't know what I'll do with a math major, but I'm just going to major in math. And this was a long time ago. So there were no PCs in people's homes. There were no laptops. There were no cell phones. My advisor said, if you're majoring in math, you have to take a computer science class. And I was really afraid of those computers. They were giant mainframes, and they had just come out with mini computers, which were still very big. And I just really didn't want to touch those things. But he insisted. So I took one programming class and was just totally hooked. So for my junior and senior year, I took all math and computer science classes and ended up with a joint major in math and computer science. And I've never looked back since. So thank goodness for the advisor.
Wow, we have a lot in common. I was trained on the CDC series of mainframe computers with punch cards. Not to date myself, but...
I used punch cards. I also used punch cards when I started working at Westinghouse, programming nuclear power plants using punch cards.
Wow. And that was your first job right out of school?
Yes, it was.
And what exactly did you do there?
I worked on nuclear was booming back then in the US, and Westinghouse was at the forefront. So I took my first job developing graphical user interfaces for the power plant operators that would take 10,000 sensor data from 10,000 different sensors in the plant. I don't remember what the time period was, but back then that was big data.
Right.
And then putting it all together, running algorithms, and producing the graphical user interface that the plant operator looks at that lets him know when something is, out of bounds, and he needs to click on that and start digging in and figuring out what's wrong. And then finished that project and moved on to another, which was a computer-aided engineering project. So just, right out of school, just enjoying trying all these different things, develop my code, let someone else maintain it.
Now, you have a great reputation in the industry, Dawn. People know you, of course, for the position that you're in today, but many people know you as the director and founder of the Cert Insider Threat Center at Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, and you spent a long time there. Can you tell us about, the early days and how the Cert Insider Threat Center evolved over time?
Sure. So I worked at Carnegie Mellon actually for 25 years. So after 12 years there, I had done a project for the Center for Disease Control and the Pennsylvania Department of Health on bioterrorism. And it got me interested in cybersecurity because I thought, boy, cybersecurity really needs to be a part of, if we had a bioterrorism attack. And so I thought, well, I'm interested in security. I don't know anything about it, but CERT is right here at Carnegie Mellon. CERT was the very first cybersecurity organization in the world. It was formed in 1988 after the very first internet worm hit. And so I thought, well, geez, I think I'll go and try to get a job at CERT. So I went to CERT and they hired me. I had no security experience, but they hired me to help manage a large project they had just gotten from the US Secret Service. And that project was the Secret Service back then, their protective mission was gates, guards, guns. It was all physical security. And they realized that they needed to incorporate cyber into that. So they hired CERT to help. And the first thing that we had to do was protect the Salt Lake City Olympics. So I took the job on August 1st, 2001, thinking this is the coolest job in the world. I get to work with the Secret Service protecting the Olympics, and I don't even know anything about security. How did I even get this job? So then a month and a half later, September 11th happens, and that cool, fun job became very real because they really thought the next target would be the Olympics. So that was a really scary time. We took our first trip to Salt Lake City, and I was the project manager, so lots of very technical people were on that trip. And they're looking through network diagrams and trying to figure out how could terrorists hack in and attack the Olympics. And someone just happened to say, so have you had any disgruntled system administrators or network administrators that have left on bad terms? And remember, we're meeting with the Salt Lake City Olympic Committee. And they said, they came back with a list of 20 people. And we're like, oh my gosh, 20 people that could just walk right into the network potentially and bring down the Olympics. And this is the International Olympic Committee. So these people are from all over the world, including the Middle East, which at that time was, 9/11 had just happened. So we decided we needed an insider threat team and an external threat team. Being that I've always really wanted to work in a people-oriented kind of field, this was right up my alley. So I said, okay, I'll take the insider threat team. And then we thought, okay, so what can we do? And we said to the Secret Service, if you can get us every insider threat case that has actually happened from FBI, Secret Service, state, local law enforcement, anything you can find, let's make sure those things can't happen. It's as good a place to start as any. So that's what we did. And it proved to be so useful to look at real cases that we just continued doing that. And so by the time I left CERT, we had collected almost 1,000 cases. We had done all kinds of research and come up with really good, useful ideas on how you can prevent, detect, and respond to insider threats. Wrote a book. And so that's kind of how the Cert Insider Threat Center was born. And then it just kept growing over time.
Well, we're going to jump ahead, but we'll certainly circle back. Today, you're the CISO at Rockwell Automation, a Fortune 500 company. What are the building blocks, Dawn, for someone who wants to become a CISO? And how did you become one? It sounds almost like you were groomed to be one, given your previous position. But everybody's on a different career track, and that is a place that a lot of people want to go.
Yeah, I think at this time, most CISOs will tell you they didn't set out to become a CISO. There wasn't any such thing as a CISO until fairly recently. But what I did was basically, like I said, I started as a programmer. That's a really important skill if a CISO has a background in software engineering, because a lot of companies do software engineering. So that enables you to understand your users, a very important user base. Secondly, being at CERT, I just got exposed to all different aspects of security because CERT has lots of different research projects and teams that work in all aspects of security. So I think that's important, that if someone wants to be a CISO, you need to understand identity and access management, risk management, threat and vulnerability management, incident response. You really need to have that well-rounded background. I also, at CERT, I did a lot of work with the government and the intelligence community. So I had a really good grasp of the cyber threat environment. To be a CISO, you have to constantly understand the threat environment and stay abreast of what's happening. Then I went to Rockwell, and at Rockwell, I really started understanding the business. Who is Rockwell? What is our role? What are the threats that we need to worry about? What's our risk profile? What's the company's risk tolerance? So really getting to know the business, because there is no definition of how to do security. It's based on what is your risk tolerance, and you always have to balance security and productivity. So then I think the final piece is communications. To be a CISO, you really need to be able to communicate with all different kinds of people, technical communications as well as non-technical communications, all the way up to the board of directors and down to every employee and contractor in your company. So I think it's CISOs, there's no real set job description, but I think we're getting there. The field is maturing, and it will become more well-defined.
So you're the CISO at one of America's largest corporations. For people who may not be familiar with Rockwell Automation, give us an idea of the size of the environment that you protect insofar as number of employees, locations, infrastructure.
So we have 23,000 employees plus thousands of contractors. We are in more than 100 locations around the world, and we create industrial automation and control systems. So what that means is, I like to use the example of a roller coaster. Everybody has probably been on a roller coaster. When you're on there, it's one of our products that knows when to put on the brakes and when to speed up. You can imagine if someone hacked into that product, what the consequences could be. We are in pharmaceutical companies and in chemical companies where the formula, the recipe for that drug or that chemical is in our product. So again, if those products could be hacked into, you could have severe consequences. We're in power, we're in water. So our products are embedded in critical infrastructure, almost every single critical infrastructure sector there is. So that's why it's a complicated environment. From my perspective, we have to protect our own IT environment, of course. We have to protect our own manufacturing. But we realize that if our products could be tampered with or could be hacked, that could be used to get to our customers. So we have a product security office that is focused on the security of all of our products and services. We provide remote security services for our customers. We have to make sure that those services are secure. We have security subject matter experts in every development team in the company. So security, as far as our infrastructure, it's built into every aspect of what we do.
So, Dawn, I guess two people right now can't have a conversation without COVID-19 coming up, and that's certainly the case with a CISO. COVID-19 has been a game changer for CISOs globally. How has it changed your role, and what, if anything, do you think has changed permanently?
So I don't know that it changed my role, but it certainly changed the risk profile of the company. Suddenly having all of our employees, most of our employees working from home, our infrastructure wasn't built for that, just like I doubt that many companies, if any, were built for that. But we had to quickly adapt. We had to quickly look at certain things like remote patching of employee computers. You can't count on people plugging into the network and getting the patches now. We had to push them out across the world. Our IT department was amazing. They were so dedicated and worked so hard to obtain additional infrastructure, obtain additional capacity, help us to escalate new security tools, new processes like the patching, so that we could, as quickly as possible, protect that infrastructure despite everyone suddenly working from home. Same with our plants. We couldn't let we are very protective of our employees in our plants, and so we couldn't let visitors come in. We couldn't let people come in and do remote maintenance on the plants. So we had to figure out how can they do that securely. So it has been a big game changer. Just security awareness communications. We put out webinars on how to work securely from home and had thousands of employees that watched them. We now put out, we call it hashtag 1 Minute Wednesdays. And every Wednesday we put out a 1-minute video. We just have whoever on the security team has a relevant topic that they'd like to talk about, just make a cell phone video and we put it out on Yammer for all of our employees. So we're doing everything we can to try and communicate and to protect with technology. And the threat environment is changing as well. So it's been quite a challenge.
So, Dawn, I want to shift gears and ask you about a topic that's been coming up over and over again with CISOs in our interviews, and that's ransomware. Not long ago, we interviewed Scott Augenbaum. He spent over 30 years as a special agent with the FBI, working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies. And this is just an ongoing epidemic. Sometimes COVID-19 can, steal our attention because it is such a big deal protecting remote users. The latest forecast is that global ransomware damages will reach about $20 billion by the end of next year, which is 57 times more than it was in 2015. How concerned should CISOs be about ransomware?
Extremely. We just read about it more and more. And it used to be that it would impact IT infrastructures. Now it's also impacting OT, operational technology infrastructures, meaning manufacturing and industrial control systems. It used to be that you would get compromised with ransomware. It would decrypt everything on your network, and then you have to decide, can we restore from backups or should we pay the ransom? Now the attackers they've gotten smarter, and so now they steal information and then they encrypt. And they now have an even more incentive for you to pay, which is you have to pay me fast or I'm going to just put your information out on the internet. And they have revealed information. So everyone knows they will do it. So now you have a double threat there. We also see ransomware hitting the supply chain. So we have been notified by multiple suppliers. They've been hit with ransomware. One of them said it will be at least a month before we're back in business. And so then we have to make sure that our supply chain, our whole business continuity plan is resilient enough to withstand one of our major suppliers being taken out. So it's very, very scary, very frustrating. And you keep putting technical measures in place, but one employee can just click on the wrong attachment or click on the wrong link and let them in.
So you mentioned paying ransoms. I'm curious, are most Fortune 500 companies, CISOs at those companies and their teams in a position to pay a ransom if they have to? Obviously, you don't want to pay a ransom for a lot of reasons, but in the event that you did have to, do most companies have access to a cryptocurrency account or a third-party provider or some means to do that?
So I've had really interesting conversations with other CISOs about this. Some of them have been hit, and they said that their cyber insurance company, they have like the Better Business Bureau rating for ransomware groups. So two of them told me their insurance company said, you were hit by a top rated ransomware group, which means if you pay them, they will give you the key. They won't hit you again. And they have a help desk, so they will help you to do your decryption. And so the insurance companies were basically saying, unless you're really confident you can restore quickly, you may want to pay. And in addition, the insurance company will take care of handling that transaction. So, if I think CISOs have to check if they have cyber insurance, check with your cyber insurance company because they may handle that cryptocurrency transaction for you if it needs to be done.
Now, what about remote users? There's so many people working from home now. A lot of ransomware infections are injected by phishing emails. Is that something that you're communicating or that CISO should be communicating out to that, home worker population now?
Oh, absolutely. That's why we did the working securely at home. That's why we do our hashtag 1 Minute Wednesdays. Anytime we do have any kind of a security incident at Rockwell, we tell people. There's no reason to keep that quiet because people need to know this happens here. I think your average everyday person isn't in the security field. They're not living and breathing security like we are. So it's important for them to know this is happening here. We do get hit. We have people fall for phishing attacks. And so then you have to contain it and just make sure that you have the technology on your endpoints that if someone does click on the wrong attachment, you can contain it so it can't spread throughout the network. And worst case, if it does, then you need to be able to back up and restore.
So I want to circle back to your background, Dawn, which ties into the conversation we're having right now. You're so natural, and I know your background. It's why I wanted to interview you. You're a CISSP, and you're one of a very small population in the Fortune 500 CISO ranks who is. How much does that help you, and how important do you think it is for CISOs who have that certification?
Yeah, I'm really surprised to hear that actually, because the CISSP certification, it indicates that you have a good, broad understanding of all of the domains applying to security. So you understand networking, encryption, communications, legal issues, application security issues, privacy issues. So it basically goes across the board and makes sure that you have a good, broad grasp of security. It is hard to get. But that's what a CISO is, right? So a CISO really does have to have a grasp of all of those areas of security. So it makes sense in my mind that that is a credential that makes sense for a CISO. But I guess in thinking about why don't they have it, a lot of CISOs come up through the very technical ranks in their company or in different companies. And so a lot of CISOs, come to think of it, have different certifications that are more valued and more useful when you're doing incident response or you're doing forensics or, you're doing pen testing. So I think that probably is the explanation.
So I'd like to move on to another topic, women in the cybersecurity field, which also ties into, the CISO roles. We recently put out a report, and I shared that with you. I think you had a chance to take a look at it. The report states that 14% of Fortune 500 positions, CISO positions that is, are filled by women. Yet 20% of cybersecurity positions globally, all positions, are filled by women. So we're seeing less representation at the CISO level in the largest companies. What observations do you have around that, if any?
Well, it's very disappointing, first of all. Last year, I posted a director position reporting to me, and I tried really hard to get women in that position because of what you just said. We need more women up at that executive level in security. I looked internally. I tried to recruit some women at Rockwell. It was just like the book Leaned In says. They looked at everything that they don't have, every qualification they don't have, instead of looking at what they did have. And so then I went out to LinkedIn and I posted to some different groups where, they're looking at women in security. Still not a single applicant, zero, not a single applicant. It was very frustrating. The women at Rockwell, the female VPs, we get together periodically. And last year, we talked about a study that had come out that said women in general, early career women, they tend to, if they're a really good individual performer, they will be promoted to a manager position. But that's where the numbers break down. So when you look at the manager position, women and men are fairly equal. It's when you go to the next level and higher that they show a very good graphic of a career ladder with no rungs in the middle for the women. And so what we're trying to do is really work hard to mentor early career young women. And personally, I like to mentor women in security and just anyone in security and really help them advocate for them and look for opportunities for them. Because a lot of times we find that women move up to those higher level executive positions because someone recruits them to do it. That it's very often not their idea saying, hey, I'm qualified for that. It's more someone else saying, hey, you're qualified for this. Why don't you apply?
On this same topic, going back, say, maybe 6-7 years ago, women held about 10-11% of the cybersecurity jobs globally. Today, that number's up to 20%. So there is some progress, although it's taken a while to see that progress, but at least we're moving in the right direction. What initiatives, if any, do you think are the most important for our industry? To get more young women involved and to, kind of populate not just the executive ranks, but all cyber positions?
Yeah, I think I love all of the STEM initiatives that are aimed at girls when they're in school, when they're, in elementary school, middle school, high school. It's important to get them at that age. Like I said, I was always good at math, but I was seen as, like the nerd or the geek. And that wasn't a complimentary term, And I think we have to get beyond that. Girls have to, let's make some TV shows where the smart girl is the hero. From a security perspective, I love security because it's basically the good guys against the bad guys. And, kids love to play that, they play around with the good guys versus the bad guys. Well, you can do that in security. You can do it as a woman and be just as good as a guy. So I think we have to start influencing at young ages. It's okay. And it's not only okay, it's cool.
Well, one of the best experiences we've had filming here was an interview with Sylvia Acevedo, the CEO at the Girl Scouts of the USA, and she's been an advocate and has done a lot to get girls trained up. I forget the numbers, but they're into the hundreds of thousands now insofar as cybersecurity badges earned by Girl Scouts. And right behind that, we had a troop of brownies, 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds who were in here, and they were amazing. And like you say, they were having fun with it. They thought of themselves as, cyber fighters in some ways, and they actually knew what ransomware was. So.
Oh, they knew what ransomware was? Little brownies?
Believe it or not. Well, they did have a little bit of training here first, I have to admit.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, Dawn, thank you so much for joining us today. This was great. I've wanted to have this interview for a while, and you were more than I expected, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to do it.
I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. Joining us today was Dawn Cappelli, CISSP, Vice President, Global Security and Chief Information Security Officer at Rockwell Automation. To learn more about Fortune 500 CISOs, visit CISO500.com.